today. Also, a couple of other issues that we will be addressing because we are privileged to have with us Representative Louie Gohmert, serving his fifth term in the United States House of Representatives, represents the 1st District in Texas, a graduate of Texas A&M and also a graduate of
going through withdrawal. It's been too long since I talked to you.
Well, I also might mention, in addition to being a member of Congress, sometimes addressing because we are privileged to have with us Representative Louie Gohmert, certainly not been away from a number of those. And you know, while you have been gone,
you gave me my start, though, man. You were the one that gave me my start. Kerby.
So I get the credit or the blame. There have been some people. $10 omnibus bill came down. One of our callers said, "You know, you have that Louie Gohmert in here against it," and I looked it up. I said, "Yeah, I really didn't need to look it up. He voted against it." So one of the questions people voting for that omnibus spending bill.
People, we should have had a number of things in there. We promised to defund the president's illegal amnesty. We promised we would defund Planned Parenthood. There are a lot of things that we promised. We promised to bring down spending, and there are just so many things that were not done that we had promised we would do. I just can't keep voting to break promises. That's not what I was elected to do.
So again, we've been told that this new Speaker of the House, and you know him, Paul Ryan, and we have high respect for him, will eventually get back to regular order. And from, again, what little I understand, I'm not a member of Congress, but I think those, and you, are we going to get to that this year?
To do, but the problem that we've had is that, and this was true of the omnibus, the Senate will pass. Bills go through committee. There'll be amendments, and we'll have the free debate on the floor. We'll go through these things. And then, of course, even though Republicans have a majority down there now, the Democrats, as Chuck Schumer said with the omnibus, that, we're getting all our agenda accomplished. But they should have to pass something down there, and if it doesn't match up with what we did, then it goes to a conference committee. But, Kerby, I think it is just abysmal that we have not sent more bills to the president's desk to force him to veto. People say, what good would this more than once? He vetoed it when it was President Clinton, and now they got closer to a veto-proof majority. Same with the balanced budget back in the 90s. They had to keep sending it. There were some shutdowns. But they built public momentum each time they sent a bill like that until they had this kind of stuff that we just sent to the president with this omnibus. The president was thrilled when he's congratulating Paul Ryan.
That is the case, but one of the reasons we wanted to bring you on is this Thursday on CNN, Anderson Cooper and the president are going to have this open. And it does seem to me that with the announcement yesterday by the president, various gun control measures and regulations that he wants to implement without consulting Congress, and then with this town hall meeting coming up on Thursday, we thought it would be good to get you on to talk about some of these regulations that the president is putting forward and some of the issues of whether or not they're constitutional and whether Congress will do anything about it. What's your thoughts?
Well, we have heard from the president today. He even wipes away tears when, if I don't know if he's being in administration is doing. like in 2013, they prosecuted around sent by the ATF. This president is prosecuting under his administration a fraction of the gun violations that occurred under Obama. If he really wanted to make a difference, he would be prosecuting, really going after the straw buyer after all these people were killed. If he would prosecute the existing gun violations, then we would be having even fewer violent crimes than we do. But instead of prosecuting violations as they exist, and keeps demanding more and more and more gun laws. And in fact, the law is currently, if you are in the business of selling weapons, then you have to get a license. You have to get people pre-cleared. You could just go online. Dealers have to get the approval they have to prosecute gun violations as they occurred. Incredible that this man is getting away with all he has.
And when we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Representative Louie Gohmert, talking anniversary of the shooting of the real Giffords, and we'll gun control, the topic at the moment, others to come, and we'll be back right after this.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
Franklin Graham made quite an announcement the other day. First, he explained his exasperation with the Republican Party when members of Congress laid an omnibus bill that failed to defund Planned Parenthood. He said, shame on Congress for week, and to top it off, funding Planned Parenthood. Loss for America. After all, not be paying for abortion. Said he is leaving the Republican Party. He has now declared himself an. Actually, he said just the opposite. He added, unless more godly, the country is in for trouble. I want when they can have an impact. We need mayors, county commissioners, message many others are repeating. In the last few weeks, I've had guests in studio organizing prayer and political activity. Pastor Lewis Hogan has organized United Cry DC 16, in which 30,000 pastors from around the country will gather in front of the Lincoln Memorial on April 9th. Ron Kelly shared how Christians can start a cultural impact team in their church to educate and mobilize members of the congregation. I'm encouraged that Christians understand how important the next elections are and are mobilizing prayer and political activity to make a difference. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Team with you on the go with the Point of View app, or Google Play stores.
You're listening to Point of View your listener-supported source for truth.
Continue our conversation today with Representative Louie Gohmert. If you'd like to join us, 1-800-351-1212. The moment, our topic is gun control, in large part because this Thursday the president will be joined on CNN's Anderson Cooper to actually have a town hall meeting called Guns in America, in which he will answer some questions, first of all, from Anderson Cooper, and then actually take some calls from individuals. This coincides with the 5th anniversary, as we mentioned just a minute ago, of the shooting of Representative Gabrielle Giffords, 13 others wounded, and so that is one of the lives. What about that?
Well, the problem is, if he wants to redefine, which it sounds like he's trying, if he wants to redefine what a law, so the law has to be changed. If he would just prosecute the gun laws as they are, instead of looking the other way, allowing more and more, then we wouldn't need the new laws. I mean, for heaven's sake, the San Bernardino shooting, they were already violating plenty of gun laws. It's this administration's failure to enforce the laws that exist that are the real problem.
What about some of these new laws that have gone into effect? One, Obamacare itself, and you're one of the few members of Congress that actually took the time to read it all the way through, did actually say that physicians can actually ask questions of their patients. Do you have guns in your house? Who has access to them? Those kinds of things. Our listeners in California, our listeners in California have a situation right now. This went into effect starting just a few days ago. Maybe a member of your family, maybe a relative, police can't even confiscate, extending the responsibility of gun control.
It's actually a little scary, and it reminds me of the satire song that the Kingston Trio did post-McCarthy hearings, and it sounds nation racially. They divided the nation. The most divisive president in my lifetime, and it sounds like he's continuing to do that. But if he would just enforce the laws that exist, he wouldn't have to keep pushing. And it reminds me, Kerby, if you recall Fast and Furious, we still haven't gotten to the bottom of just how bad this was because of the lying and obfuscating by the Justice Department. But we do know that there were over 2,000 weapons that were, at the pushing of this administration, gotten into the hands of drug cartels. They actually use the fact that these additional weapons, these folks have no shame. They will use the fact that they pushed for to be out there in public in criminal hands to try to create more gun laws.
Hearing, of course, Representative Louie Gohmert, and we'll head out to Georgia first. Harlan, what would you like to add to the conversation?
In its nature is authoritarian and hypocritical. If you're talking about the only it seems really hypocritical, you know.
Interesting. Further do we want to go? I mean, just the Chris Perry saying, you know, the problem is we have people shooting than just a regulation on who can sell a gun. A gun dealer, it looks like the real desire is to reduce the number of guns in America. What are your thoughts?
It sure sounds like they want to restrict people's Second Amendment rights. That's the only reason I can figure that they would not be prosecuting gun violations of existing gun laws, while instead pushing for new gun laws. they want to restrict people's Second Amendment rights. And, Kerby, during my decade as a district judge, a felony judge, handling thousands, I can't recall any cases where I went to a gun store and law-abiding people do that. Guns are outlawed. Only outlaws will have guns. And if you look at the places where these mass shootings have occurred, California, Colorado, Oregon, look at all the murders in Chicago, Washington, D.C., there are if you look at places like Texas and others where there is concealed carry and now open carry, there's not the violence. And up the rules and allowing private sector to carry weapons, and they have been able to bring down the violence because now they're getting assistance from law-abiding citizens in Israel. So it can be a helpful thing when law-abiding citizens have weapons and she really wants to go after ferociously.
Let's go back to some of those same things. So you have the floor.
Debbie?
I'm thinking that, first of all, I like you, that the Senate coup, because you've got relatively intelligent Republicans making decisions, not doing anything about a president who's breaking the law on a regular basis. And gun control. No, that's not what we need. If San Bernardino, if there had been one or two people carrying a weapon, concealed or not, it's not going on is our government trying to take away our right because they're wanting to, listen, the only true words that Obama ever spoke was 20 days before the election when he said, we're 20 days away from transforming America as you know it. I mean, something needs to be done, and why Congress and the Senate is not stepping up to the plate and doing what they're supposed to do. Maybe they all need a copy of the
Constitution. I need to jump in. We're coming to a break here. Louie, the line, and I as well. But let me just take a break because it's one of those guest hosts on a number of programs, including Sean Hannity. And so kind of what Debbie was saying, the Gallup poll came out yesterday, and we mentioned this. Out of 23 pressing problems before the United States, before this country, gun control was just a whole lot of Americans out here right now thinking that this is something in his time and talents on. And of course, there will be this town hall meeting on Thursday. So that's why we wanted to give you a little bit of a preview for that, and are certainly grateful to Louie Gohmert for this. We'll take a break. We'll come back. We'll talk more about gun control, but I hope we can get into a couple of other issues, as well as I might have a comment or two about what's going on in Oregon. So we'll take all those calls and our conversation right after this.
Modern life is go, 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 and Point of View is absolutely ready to go with you. I dare smartphone or a tablet, maybe even a computer that is app-based. There's a new way to keep up with Kerby and the team, the free Point of View radio app. With quick links to listen to the program live, to keep up and share Kerby's meaty and insightful through the app as well. Ways to Visit your app store, iTunes or Google Play. Search for the Point of View radio app. There's no reason not to take us with you. The free Point of View radio app. There's one more button on 360 support you need.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kerby Anderson.
Gun control topic at the moment as we're talking with Representative Louie Gohmert. A couple reasons for that. President today said with tears in his eyes that this is not an attempt to take away people's guns, and yet I think there are a few people somewhat skeptical about that. And more importantly, there is a Thursday town hall meeting that will be taking place with Anderson Cooper and then taking phone calls. And in light of on guns, wanted to get some perspective on that. Debbie, still your thoughts about some of
in Washington. She's awesome.
Yes, I'm here. I'm here. Let's go.
With a few allies like you, I mean, we could do a lot of good. But you're exactly right. Everything that Debbie had to say. These are fights that we have to have, And, we keep being told, look, we can't win this fight. Well, going back to the ballots fought and knowing that they were going to lose initially, but by fighting, they eventually won in the end. And that's where we ought to be. And we can't afford to have, like they apparently did when Obama and Romney were head-to-head. We have got to have for the things that Debbie's talking about, that we've told people we would fight for. Then people get discouraged and just say, what difference does it make? There are, one's not much different than the other. When we can make a difference if we just stand up, we've done it too many times.
I might just mention that in light of what Louie just said a minute ago, tomorrow we are doing a program where we'll have Gary Fraser, might even have some others join us. We were hoping even got detached retina, so may not be able to. Churches can on the program to talk about this. Tune in tomorrow. But let me take another phone call, and we'll head up here to Louisiana, KPAE. Ricky, you're on the air. Although I seem to be getting a line here. Ricky, go ahead. Well, we'll pick up Ricky in just a minute. Let me go to Eric.
To you and the congressman. Congressman, you said that it was unbelievable. More unbelievable than that is who is aiding, literally, but it's the It's the Republican Party. Now, we were told, you said if we only had some more Debbies up there, that we could get something done. Well, we were told, give us the House, we give you the House. Colleagues, Congressman Junior Congressman, he came back home and was telling us, man, we are in such dire straits with our debt. And I mean, he was really pumped over it and said, he told his dad, he said, Dad, people, and told us, he said, the American people do not understand the trouble that we're in. But you know what happened? Now that he's been up there for 5 years and drunk the Beltway Kool-Aid for 5 years, all he does now when he comes home is name drops and telling us about all of his good constituent service and all of the people, these parties that he goes to and he never says a bloody thing about our debt. And so, you talked about discouraging us. You bet we're discouraged, man, because we've been lied to over and over and over. And now we've got nearly a $20 trillion debt for my 8 children. The Republican Party is a joke. Have a Republican president. Are you kidding? That Republican George Bush Jr. did, and his daddy.
Okay, you're right. You're right. By trying to bring down John Boehner, I do. If you're a good team player, like I'm told I have not been, then you don't have to fight these battles like keep for what we've said we were going to do. I mean, you don't think I get discouraged, for heaven's sake? And, if there are too many people that that means that I get shot at constantly. Back. I believe as Christians protect ourselves. But let me tell you, you're pointing at a problem that people, it's amazing they don't see it coming. They think that people get to Washington and they're threatened, either you do this or you do that, and we're coming after you. What? There is some of that, and that's why I've got a primary opponent. But the big thing that they get Republicans on is you need to be a team player. Yes, we're going to save the country, but you've got to be a team player. And Thomas Massey and some of our good fighters, they said, wow, we got to say, Lord, flashing, but look, some of us.
Let's take another phone call. We'll head out to
he wanted to be Speaker of the House at one time, but then he kind of predicted exactly what Paul Vaughn did, was sold the America down the river. That's exactly what he did. But Representative Louie, shouldn't you start, impeachment proceedings? I mean, your star would shoot through the universe with all the real Christian conservatives can start impeachment proceedings for all the executive orders that the president has done so far and everything that was illegal. I just, wish you'd do that, and they would go a long ways to give everybody more hope. There's somebody besides Ted Cruz that has a backbone on Capitol Hill that's willing to do something. But, somebody needs to start some kind of impeachment proceedings there to stop all this executive, illegal orders.
Louie, any comments? First of all, of course, you ran for Speaker, as well as, of course, what about impeachment? Yeah.
Well, as far as impeachment, enough people, I think there are plenty of bases you can file for impeachment, but which means you got to have support among the American people, then it ends up taking. I mean, I led the charge a year and a half ago to stop a de facto amnesty. That becomes the issue, and they're just, I know people get mad at me when I say it, but if we can get the support behind it, then fine. But the American people aren't there. There aren't enough members of Congress that are there. And so Dennis Kucinich filing impeachment of Bush. He files it, he reads it on the floor, and then nothing happens except he was marginalized. And I need to correct the record. When you were saying, I was wanting to be Speaker, look, the reason I announced for Speaker was, I do think I would have been a good Speaker, but the reason I announced, Jim Bridenstine, Thomas Massey, and me, and there were 6 others, we were at 9 for about 3 weeks, trying to get to 29 so that we could get a second ballot. We needed 29 Republicans to vote for somebody besides Boehner. That would throw it to a second ballot. And in the second ballot, I knew that Speaker as a compromise candidate. Jim called and said, Louie, we can't get past 9. We got to get to 29. Everybody's using the same excuse they did 2 years ago. That excuse away. I knew when I did that I was a sacrificial lamb.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Louie Gohmert with us for a few more minutes. I might just mention on our website we have an article on Obama gun control regulations that you might want to read, as well as one that came out by David French, The Case for Civil Disobedience in Oregon. We talked about some of that yesterday. But, Louie, I was just thinking, in light of even the last couple of phone calls, it is illustrative of maybe why people inside the Beltway can't understand why the leading contenders for the Republican nomination are people like Donald Trump, and they've rejected a period of time. You see the standoff in Oregon that Americans are having with their government, and
for those that are paying attention, government we saw with Lois Lerner, and they were actually singling out conservatives, Constitution believers, and we have seen massive abuses in this administration that, Nixon could only have dreamed of life as they've continued to gather more and more land. And talking about the omnibus, people were bragging, gee, we got a provision in there that allows us did a program that allowed to keep gobbling up millions and millions of acres where oil and gas can't be produced. And we should have stopped this national monument program that allowed Clinton, or at least he abused it to the point that he just put the second largest coal deposit in the world off limits by calling it a national monument. We were bringing some of those programs to an end, and in this omnibus, they're allowed to continue. So there were a whole lot of reasons not to vote for that. I want people to understand, I knew when I announced for that they were telling constituents, look, I'd vote for anybody but Boehner if that excuse away when I announced, and I knew that there would be people in Congress who would never forgive. And we laid the foundation. I like him, but vote for him on the floor, and I took a lot of credit. At least I could have voted for him on the floor, but when you are right, the omnibus wasn't the right thing to do. So anyway, yes, I announced for Speaker. I think I would have made a good one, but I knew that people would be so angry. Catcher, it's just not going to happen. But Andy Weber says, so what you're saying, Louie, is we got change, and that's exactly what we got. We got Pope and change.
Pope and change. That's a great line. Again, the question I have maybe for our listeners is a lot of them are frustrated. They're saying, okay, we have a Republican House, Republican Senate. Let's hope we can, find an individual that would serve in the White House that would be pro-life and certainly would be for limited government and with a lot of backbone, because the story Eric told a minute ago has been I'm not sure how Paul Ryan does, but I know exactly what John Boehner would do. He'd say, look, if you really want to get on one of these really choice committees, you've got to kind of get along to go along, okay? If you're going to want to go along with us, then maybe we'll get you there. If you don't, I will primary you. I will have somebody challenge you in the primary, and I will make sure the Republican National Committee gives you no money.
To the threats of being primaried, which is where I am, you first have this team player concept. Wow, did we misjudge you? We thought you were going to be a team player. Oh, I am a team player. I am a team player. But, well, then why are you talking about, not supporting on this omnibus? Well, it's just not what we promised people. Look, you just be a team player, help us on this, and then we're going to get to those things we promised. And then some of our guys that have awakened, have said, wow, I've been here for X number of years, and I've been a team player the whole time. We still hadn't done what we promised people we would do. But you're right, that's where it goes, but with emphasis on, encouraging people to be a team player. But as I told one of our establishment leaders in the country when he said, I just want you guys to all run the same play, I said, I do too, but when my quarterback calls a play to run to the wrong end zone, not only am I not blocking, I'm going to probably try to tackle him before he gets there. So that's, it's the team player that Republican members of Congress seem to be more attuned to, and it seems to strike more of a chord before they get to the threats like some of us have got.
Sure. We had Eric on before. Eric, I think you want to come back and maybe say you at least appreciate Louie Gohmert, so we could clear that up. How about that?
Oh, absolutely. Congressman, let me tell you, I love you. I respect you. You're one of my heroes. When I said that you, it's a generic you, it was not directed at you, but at all of those sorry, no good, worthless rhino Republicans. No, you keep doing what you're doing. I love you. I pray for you. I respect you. No, please, you took. You're the kind of principled man that we need.
There's no idea how much that means to me. I really, really appreciate it, because these really are discouraging times. A strong Christian, and the only guy I know of as a speaker anywhere in any state that took power away from himself to spread back to the members. But Dan has said, Louie, you're like a Jeremiah up here. You just stand up and tell people how it is and where it's going. And laugh. And they get mad at you. Anyway, but there are more and more of us, and I want people to be encouraged. We've just got to build on those that understand the truth, and that we don't have a lot more time. I don't think there's enough time to build a third party before we lose this country completely. Our freedoms are going away, and the bad forces, if you want to call Iran a bad force, I mean, there's evil throughout the world.
That's right.
That is getting the upper hand. And as an elderly or a senior friends in Washington to stop getting weaker. He said, we were so excited when you elected your first black president in America, but since he's been president, we've seen America get weaker and weaker. And, we all know where we're going when we die, but our only chance of having a safe and prosperous life is if America is strong.
Yes.
So just keep getting weaker.
Louie, appreciate you being with us. Let's come back again, and we'll talk about some of these other issues. Thanks for joining us today here on Point of View. We'll be back.
Love you, my brother.
Right after this.
Have you ever thought about taking a trip to the Holy Land? I know I have, but perhaps like me, you've always thought, make sure I see everything. Well, maybe you can do it. Point of View has made the plans. 15 days, 10 in Israel, on the journeys of view. Imagine yourself in Caesarea and Nazareth, where Jesus grew up, in Capernaum on the Sea of Galilee. We don't suggest you get out and try walking, but, well, you could. The Dead Sea, Masada, the Temple Mount, the Garden Tomb, it's all included, and you'll be accompanied by Kerby. Corinth, Berea, Thessalonica, Philippi. See the full schedule at pointofview.net. Come on, take that next step. Pointofview.net. Journey to Jerusalem. Pointofview.net. Point of View will continue after this.
I wanted to thank y'all for everything you do each day to community about the things we can do, and just the way you're so informative. I listen to you daily and love you guys and appreciate you so much.
God bless you, Kerby, for keeping this show so on track and for the decades of wonderful help to this nation that Point of View has been. We're all big fans of your work, and we pray that God will just prosper it.
As a Christian, over the years that I've followed this program, I am constantly challenged to be on guard and to evaluate what's going on. And if for no other reason, to protect the caliber and the truth of your programming, I need to protect out there for
biblical perspective to them. Apologetics, theology, prophecy, and society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go.
America Live. This and now
from point of view. New product, and I say product because we're talking about not just a as well as a wonderful guide that you can use to teach this in your own church and your small group is Christians. It is done. He is a New Testament scholar as well as in partnership with the Oxford Center for University, serves now in a number of different capacities and also a part of the Houston Christianity. He's been on a number of different talk shows.
I'm so honored to be with you. You're a scholar and you're a statesman. And Kerby, I've got to bring you greetings from my 89-year-old grandfather who listens to you every day, John Wesley Johnston in Kansas City. So hello from my grandfather, too.
Oh, that's wonderful. We tried to get you on before, but I think we were double booked, and I'm glad it kind of worked out that way because I was aware of the book, but only more recently became aware of this entire package of material. I know that you've been on with Janet Parshall yesterday. I know you're going to be on with our good friend Tim Wildman, but we're privileged to have you on today. And when we talk about answering questions, Dr. Johnston is actually encourage people to take you maybe 5 minutes to watch it on your Twitter feed, a blog post you might, as well as sometimes in the church we're answering questions no one is really asking. And so in a lot of what we're going to be talking about here are some of the trending questions. True?
Exactly, Kerby. You're so right. It's so important that we have much deeper than ministry opportunities.
Well, and again, one of the things we're going to many times people don't necessarily think about. So obviously, we're going to talk about some of those kind of classical questions about, for example, the proof, the resurrection, or whatever it might be. But then we're going to get into things like. Because what you did was pull together the question, a number of your fellow colleagues there, National Society of Christian Apologetics, or something about the demons, the paranormal, suicide, and mental illness, or for example, because those are the hot button issues. But you had to actually do the survey to come to those conclusions, didn't you?
Exactly. It was very grassroots, and over the process of 6 years, Kerby, we did events at churches of all different denominations. I'm a Baptist. I was even invited to speak at a Missouri Synod Lutheran church, and after capturing, and I'm one of those rare people, Kerby, that encourages the audience to leave their cell phone on while I'm speaking. It's a step of faith in and of itself, but it's important because it gives me an absolute understanding of what the questions are that the audience has right then and there. Questions from our audience. And we said, what are the top questions that are being asked by Christians in the church? I mean, as you rightly point out, and Kerby of the church, and of course, like Lee Strobel, out. Just because he became a Christian didn't mean that he stopped having questions. They were just different. Have we done enough to answer the questions of the 98% of people that are regular attenders in our church? Quite honestly, Kerby, I know this is probably true in your ministry as well. I know many questions, or B, these questions, they were coming up. Question that I am asked relates to suicide for the bodily resurrection of Jesus. Nobody really understands what the Bible is. So we have a section called Bible-ish Christianity, and then, of course, this whole notion of the problem of evil, suffering, and pain, and adversity, and We tackled these head on. We've got great answers. A lot of useless Christians out there that might know something cerebral, but they don't necessarily have the skills leadership-wise to enact those answers. And so we have engagement principles at the end of all the parts of the book to just help people at a grassroots level know how to communicate these to their friends, family, loved ones, coworkers, and whatnot.
If you're watching online, or if you want to watch this a little bit later, I'm holding up some of the material because in addition to the book is a whole unanswered Bible study kit, and that includes such things as the group study guide. And that study book alone is 140 pages. Your book, of course, Unanswered, is 200 plus pages, and then 2 DVDs and a number of other resources. So again, this is a whole package of material, which I would really encourage pastors, small group leaders, Bible study leaders to consider, to use a kind of silly answer questions that people are, is really going, and we're going to go through the 6 different chapters. But just before we go to the break, talk for a minute, Dr. John, that you can self, and it seems to me that this is just ready for
for 12 years. So I really wrote the book that I wish that I would have had during those days. And so as we look at the product Unanswered, and I so appreciate you talking about this, Kerby, we're serving it up for people. I mean, the issue that we talk about, there's so much bad information that is immediately available on Google, and you can't really use Google to answer these deep, searching questions of the heart. And so not only do we have the trade book, every word of this study, and you have a 6-week daily personal time, but then it's also geared for group time. We have churches, I'm so thankful to the Lord, all over the country right now doing this study, coming together as a group, but also doing it privately. And then there's fill in the blanks, there's question and answers. I mean, it's tools and answers, and that's exactly what we need in the local church today.
Again, the book is endorsed as well, and if you want more information, we have a link to christianthinkers.com. There's where you can find out some more information, maybe even want to book a tour to your church or conference and find out a lot more about Dr. Jeremiah Johnston. So when we come back, we're going to work our way through those 6 very... Obviously, you need the book for all of this, but take place right after these important messages.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
Franklin Graham made quite an announcement the other day. First, he explained his exasperation with the Republican omnibus bill that failed to defund Planned Parenthood, passing such a wasteful spending bill last Planned Parenthood. A Huffington Post article called it a big loss for America. After all, the apologist had a chance to put a stop to this, but they didn't. He has now declared himself an independent. But there's more. He didn't stop there. If he had, you might think he was calling for Christians to stop getting involved in godly men and women get in the system. Our country is in for trouble. I want to challenge Christians, even city council members, school board members who uphold biblical values. You know, this is a message many others are repeating. In the last few weeks, I've had guests in studio organizing prayer and political activity. Pastor Louis Hogan has organized United Cry DC 16, in which 30,000 pastors from around the country will gather in front of the Lincoln Memorial on April 9th. Ron Kelly shared how Christians can start a cultural impact team in their church to educate and mobilize members of the congregation. I'm encouraging political activity to make a difference. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Take Kerby and the Point of View team with you on the go with the Point of View app. Search for Point of View Radio.
Supported source.
And as we mentioned just at the outset, these are questions that people are asking that oftentimes are not getting answers. And one of those had to do with, if you will, the silence of God. I remember at Pro Ministries, we had a book that through the silence, and you have a section here on God on mute, what to do when God is silent. That is a question that a lot of people are asking and really deserves an answer. So how do you go about answering that very difficult and vexing question?
Well, Kerby, thank you so much for pointing out how prevalent, first, this question is. When someone stands up on a pulpit at a church or a Bible study and says, God spoke something to me, or God's doing something in my life, what we've found is 80% of the people immediately have doubt and problem with that because they've never personally sensed God working in their life, or God, quote-unquote, not doing in their life, versus the God we read about